Released during the Taken King, the Hunter exotic chest piece, the ATS 8 Tarantella, sounded like an interesting exotic just from reading the exotic perks. Being Blade Dancer specific, the Tarantella has a very similar appearance to the Hunter exotic helm, the ATS 8 Arachnid, which makes sense given they share part of their name, but they do not share the same subclass characteristics. Looking at the perks of the Tarantella, you can roll any primary or special weapon ammo perks, and in my case, I settled with hand cannon and sniper rifle ammo. The last two perks are locked, which makes sense when you look at the exotic perk, but the perks are locked into receiving less arc burn damage, or gain more armor while using an arc subclass. So obviously the perks are pointing towards a Blade Dancer, with the exotic perk granting reduced arc burn damage from adds in PvE, and your arc grenades and super will recharge faster. Just saying faster isn't all that helpful, so how much faster is it? From some brief testing, I found that your grenade and super cooldown about 12% faster or so. Putting this into context, you would expect to shave about 30 seconds off your super's cooldown, assuming you are using tier 5 intellect, and will shave about 3 seconds off your grenade, assuming you are using tier 5 discipline. So this exotic is offering quite a bit, and actually has some utility in both PvE and PvP. I've heard that in arc burn content, stacking the intrinsic reduced arc burn damage perk with the arc burn defense perk does actually significantly reduce the damage that adds deal to you, particularly with the arc burn modifier on. It is quite hard to measure how effective the defense is, but from the anecdotal evidence I've seen, it does seem to work well. If we were to use this in PvP however, using arc armor is a far better choice. My stack configuration would definitely be a 5-5-2, since the Tarantella is directly working with both your grenade and super. Since strength isn't all that important on a Blade Dancer, going tier 12 isn't particularly necessary. My 95% roll barely allows me to get a 5-5-2 build, but having hand cannons and sniper ammo was worth keeping it. So looking at the subclass, we'll have to tune the nodes to either PvE or PvP. If I were to use this in arc burn strikes or nightfalls, or most PvE activities in general, I would probably spec like this, with flux grenades, showstopper, fast twitch, quick draw, and encore. These perks would definitely help your Blade Dancer's super reach its full damage potential, or if I was more worried about dying, switch up encore for Hungering Blade. In PvP, I'd still stay with flux grenades, but would switch to blink, backstab, and stay with Hungering Blade. Now that we've got the builds, let's look at the places to use the Tarantella. Well, we've firstly got to use Blade Dancer, which isn't all that popular in most raid content since tethers and golden guns are typically more ideal and much safer. Maybe in Crota's End or King's Fall, particularly Hive content, where you are more likely to get into melee range with enemies. Using Arcblade with Encore is worth the risk. But raids like Volta Glass and Wrath of the Machine cater to a Nightstalker far better. Even after the strong damage buff to Arcblade during the Taken King, Blade Dancers are still quite underwhelming in PvE, unless there are specific modifiers enhancing it. It's always been fun and rewarding against mobs of weak enemies, but unless you're using Encore and time your attacks really well, mages shouldn't have too much trouble taking you out. Putting it all aside, let's assume we're going to use Blade Dancers in PvE, either for fun or there are great modifiers in the Heroic Strikes playlist this week. The question is going to be, is the Tarantella worth using over other Blade Dancer specific exotics, particularly the Mask of the Third Man? The answer will ultimately depend on what you value more, either a longer super or a faster recharging super. Both options are good, but I tend to favour a faster recharging super for several reasons, but mostly because having your super available more often is stronger than having it active for a few more seconds. Not only that, by taking reduced arc burn damage and having faster grenades also increases the appeal of the Tarantella over the Mask of the Third Man in PvE. To summarise this chess piece, I would make it my first choice for a Blade Dancer exotic, over the Third Man, Lucky Raspberry, or the Shinobu's Vow. What about in PvP though? The reduced incoming arc burn defense isn't going to help you in this environment, but is it still worth using over the Third Man? I would say yes, mostly for the arc armor and the faster grenade recharge. Shinobu's Vow does have more value in the Crucible than it would in PvE, but I found flux grenades to work in my favour more than skips. One of the great things about the Tarantella is that it constantly works for you in the background, and doesn't require you to activate your super or anything to gain the same benefit, as is the case with the Third Man. In a typical game of Crucible, the Tarantella should grant you one extra super per game, without you having to do anything special. For this reason alone, I would select the Tarantella as my primary piece of exotic armor for a Blade Dancer in Crucible, and in PvE, the incoming defense perk is enough to warrant its use over the Third Man. So let me know what you guys think. Do you rate the Tarantella, or would you prefer to stick with the Third Man? Thanks for watching, guys.